Hello, everyone. We've had Richard Suttles on twice before. He is a counterterrorism analyst and just an expert on this stuff. And we've had him on talking about multiple attacks by Islamic terrorists that were supposed to happen really soon. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. This is going to be a short broadcast here. But I wanted to ask Richard about this recent breakup that was discovered by the FBI, I think it was, where they discovered these guys that were planning to do a terrorist attack on the UFC fight at the White House. And so he's got some information about that, and we'll talk about that, maybe some things that the mainstream media is not reporting that he might be able to give us. So Richard, welcome.
Hey, thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
Well, thanks for coming on. So tell us, what happened recently? Why should we be concerned about this?
Well, what happened was there was a group of guys talking on Signal about doing an attack against the UFC. They wanted to send drones to the event. So while the contest was happening at the White House, they wanted drones to drop explosives on the crowd. Then they wanted to try to gather the people, the crowd, to leave the White House and to go out into a wider open area as if they're helping them to evacuate. And then they wanted to draw them into an area where snipers could then attack them. And I have heard, I haven't had this verified, that they even wanted to send in, like commando style, a few people into the White House after that, just to have more gunmen to go after anyone who's still on the White House grounds. That last part, I think, would have been really, really difficult. And I haven't had confirmation that was part of the plans, but I have heard that part 3 was part of it too.
How many people were involved in this?
From what I understand, there were over 20 people discussing this on Signal. The Secret Service and the FBI were looking at all of them. It's just that they rolled up. They arrested 5 of them pretty solidly when they had an insider. Once one of the group was working with the FBI, they were able to roll up 5 people rather quickly. So there's more coming.
So they haven't got all of them yet. Is that what you're saying?
Right. They haven't got them all yet.
Wow. So let's talk about the drones for a moment. We're right now, as we're recording this, we are at war with Iran. It seems like it might come together and a peace deal might occur this Friday, tomorrow. But who knows whether that's going to happen. One of the things that we have seen in this war with Iran are drones. Drones that are attacking ships. It's a cheap way to do warfare. We've seen it going on. The Ukrainians and Russians are making use of it. This is new stuff, a way of warfare that's out there now. So
right.
When I was in Israel, my wife and I were in Israel. It was like 2016, 2017, 18, right around there. And we were talking to one of the guys who I think he was the liaison between their Department of Homeland Security, the Israeli Department of Homeland Security, and ours. Or it might have been a guy who was in control of building the fence over there for their protection. He was saying showing us, we were at the top of this hill and we looked over and there was, I don't know if it was Gaza or the West Bank or, Palestine. It was the Badlands. And he was saying, okay, you got these fences, and then in between you got this land that is it's a mine. They have mines there, and then they had this technology. He said that that they were going to send over drones, that the Palestinians were going to send over drones, but they were already prepared for it because if they did, they had this technology, electronic technology that they'd sent out. I don't know if it's a burst of signal or something to jam it, and it would just fall out of the sky.
Right.
So, do we have? I'm guessing we have that. I mean, that technology they claim to have had, 8, 9 years ago, 10 years ago. Have we
Right.
had it all that time?
The United States is notoriously always behind Israel when it comes to stuff like this. Uh, Only in the past few months, we have gotten really, really better at having a counter drone um, solution at the local level so that local law enforcement can deal with drones in a situation. And then just case in point, this was released on the media, so I'm not even giving any proprietary information. Just at the World Cup events, just this past last few days, there have been people. And I'm sure they're mostly tourists, but people who have been trying to have drones hover over areas where there's large crowds, and law enforcement was able to bring those drones down. They weren't all. There's been a couple of news stories where they weren't all tourists, uh, but it just goes to show law enforcement does have a better solution now for counter drones that we didn't have not that long ago. So we are getting a lot better at being able to address the drone threat. But you're right that it's coming. It's interesting to me because ISIS was using drones against U.S. troops in 2014. And I remember I
Wow.
was still in the counterterrorism world back in 2014. And I was like, here comes drones, here it comes. And now it's, 12 years later. And only now here comes drones. So it's interesting that we actually had this long to prepare for that.
Very interesting. So we're just getting that technology now. Within the last year, we got the technology, but Israel, you said they come out with this years before we do in a lot of things.
Well, the biggest thing is the local level police, our local level police, because our military might have it, maybe as soon or if not sooner than Israel, maybe. But for local police to have it at the street level, that's an update. And so it's of course we have a lot of local level police. It's not as feasible to get them equipped as quickly as Israel can get their IDF, equipped. But we are a lot better now over the last few months than we ever have been.
Now, about 2 years ago, up in, I believe it was New Jersey, there were a bunch of drones and nobody could figure out what's going on with them. Who's operating
Right.
them? And is this a national security threat or what? And they weren't being identified and they weren't being shot down. Can you tell us,
Right.
do you know what was going on with that?
Yeah, I'm still not quite sure what was happening with all those reports, and I've seen various different presentations on what was happening there, and I haven't really looked into it to see what's going on. I can just say that you know I'm not revealing anything, any secrets here when I say that people like China and Iran would love to send stuff over here just to learn, just to come over here and see what we got going, and just to prepare themselves in case they wanted to do some sort of attack, or if they wanted to steal something from us. Uh, Flying drones like that over sensitive areas, it's not past them. And again, I'm not saying that's what this was in New Jersey, but I can tell you publicly available information. This is the kind of stuff that China and Iran would like to do.
Wow, interesting. What else? What else do you think it's important for us to know about this recent plot against the White House?
One of the reasons why I brought this up to you was because it was such a grand scale plan. Two things popped into my mind as soon as I heard about this. Two things popped into my mind. One is that you and I, for maybe 6 or 7 months now, have been talking about grand scale attacks from terrorists, and now here was one in the news where, at least at the planning stage, at the discussion phase, they were talking about drones and then moving people into snipers and then maybe doing some commando style attacks after that. So this would be teams of people working together. And remember, you and I talked about how having teams work together is really, really difficult. And so it's true that there's a lot of terrorists who want to do that, but I don't see them actually training, at least not enough to pull off a grand scale attack. So we talked about that last year. And then I talked about how I'm more worried about smaller scale attacks. But then here we are on the news where they talked about here's 20 people
Yeah.
planning together on Signal. So that came up. At least that kind of talk was showing up on the news. So that was the first thing that popped up in my mind. The second thing that popped up in my mind
Hang
is
on a
that
second. I do want to ask you something before you go, and hit that
okay.
point.
Okay.
So are yeah, you're saying the large scale attacks are difficult. Yep. And I guess this would have been a small scale attack. But all right, these Muslim terrorists, they train a lot for this stuff. These
Right.
guys that were looking, I don't know much about them, but the photos they showed, they looked like a bunch of losers, that
Right.
played
Oh, you're
video
talking about,
games all day in their
yeah,
mom's basement.
right. These are American guys. I've seen the list of the guys from the public criminal complaints and the affidavits. They're just regular American guys.
Yeah. So, I mean, there is a difference between those
Yes.
kind of guys that aren't the sharpest tools in the shed. And then you've got these Muslim terrorists who train very seriously for this stuff.
Right. And yeah, and you and I talked about this when we did our very first podcast back in I believe it was late 2025, wasn't it? It's been
Yeah, I
so.
think it was, I think we had, one in November, one in December, maybe.
Okay.
We had one in March. So maybe this is the fourth time we've done this.
This man, time flies.
Yeah.
But yeah, we talked about how groups like Hamas and Al Qaeda, they do train in the desert, hard scale. We've all seen podcasts where counterterrorism experts who are out in the field and see this stuff. You're right. Al Qaeda, ISIS, Hamas, they've been seriously training to do hardcore type terrorist attacks. That kind of training I have seen. What I was concerned about when we first talked about this was whether those same hardcore trained terrorists are actually here, training in, say, North Carolina or even Canada or Mexico, just nearby. Because in order to do that kind of thing, you would have to train a lot. Let's say you're going to attack on a Friday. You'd have to do a lot of training for that month somewhere really, really close by to keep it kind of fresh in your mind. You're not going to train for months and months and months in Afghanistan and then get an apartment in Chicago and stay there for 5 years and then be ready to go one day 5 years later. It's not like that. You got to constantly train. When I was in the Marines, we constantly trained. We didn't take especially in Iraq, we didn't take a week off. We were constantly training. So you would need that for that large scale thing. And I was saying back then, I don't see those guys training here the way I would need to see that large Hamas style attack. But I was talking about how any kind of training, for me as a counterterrorism expert, I don't care if they're Muslims or vegetarians or Green Bay Packer fans. I don't care. For me, I don't care what your group is. If you're training and you're actually ready to start doing attacks, that's how you get on my radar. I'm not one of those guys who cares about groups, left wing, right wing.
Sure.
I could care less. Are you going to do it or not?
But most of the terrorist attacks are coming from Muslim terrorists like Al Qaeda and ISIS, right?
Right. When you look at the people who are training in Afghanistan, of course, yeah, that's Al Qaeda, ISIS. I'm just saying, for me, as a guy who's protecting the homeland, I'm looking only for that capability. I don't look at the other label stuff. You got to show me that physical capability.
Okay.
So with these guys,
point two.
What's that?
I had interrupted you. You were going to go to your second point.
Right. I was just going to say my second point is that sometimes you have people who are talking and they're not quite ready to do an attack, but they are planning it. This is kind of a weird thing because in the counterterrorism world, we're focused on intent and capability. It's got to be both of those. So if you have the intent and you're talking about it, you so far haven't technically crossed into the threshold yet. You've got to actually show that you're actually really getting ready to physically do this. And then there's certain metrics that we have that we're looking to see if you can do. Sometimes, and this has happened since 2001, sometimes there's individuals or groups who aren't quite ready to do the attack, and then say the FBI or some sort of law enforcement sees that they're planning, and they get involved to say, well, hey, if you want explosives, we can give you explosives, or if you want finances, we can help you with financing. And actually, the terrorists are now working with the FBI to get better posture to do an attack. Sometimes those cases don't go very far because the judge will say, hey, if you hadn't have gotten involved in an investigation and started helping them with finances and acquiring explosives, they might not have made it this far. So that was the second thing that popped into my mind. When I started hearing the type of people who were arrested, I was like, is this going to be 21 guys who, maybe have some guns and maybe are familiar with shooting, but they haven't really gotten together and done this tactical training. They haven't purchased any drones. And right now, we're still looking to see what all they purchased. This particular group, they have purchased weapons. They do have posted pictures. I don't know if this was in the press or not, but I can tell you that they have posted pictures of tactical training. Now, this could be a couple of guys, taking some guns out into the woods, but that's tactical training. So if they've purchased weapons and they've done some training, that counts as some intent to have the capability to actually do an attack. And I can tell you that without breaking any law enforcement rules or classified rules. So we have seen that. But is it going to be 21 guys who've really done some serious, intense training or not? And that's going to come out. And then I wonder if once the FBI and the Secret Service became aware of this, was there any kind of, and right now I don't know, was there any kind of activity where they were helping them get ready? Not really helping them get ready, but making a case against them so that some judge later is going to say, hey, if you hadn't done this, they wouldn't have made it this far. And at this point, I don't know yet whether that's the case, but that was the second thing that came up in my mind. Is this going to be a situation where either the FBI or the Secret Service got involved as if they were also a bad guy, and then their work helped them get to this point? And that remains to be seen.
Okay. I'd like to transition here back to what we had originally spoken about back in November, December. That's the plans of Al-Qaeda and ISIS to have coordinated attacks here in the homeland. Nothing has happened since then.
That's right.
So why?
In my view, the same thing I said back the very first time we did this is the same problem. And remember, when you posted this podcast, we got a lot of hate from the right wing and the left wing. From the right wing, we got some hate because I was saying that Sarah Adams might have overstated how quickly they're willing to move on us right now. But I agreed with her that there's thousands who want to. So there are thousands of well-trained Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and Hamas people who would love to do it and who are well-trained. And I agreed with her on that. But I just added this caveat about actually physically training to do it. And I said, because of that, I don't think that that's going to happen as quickly as she was saying. And I think we were even thinking about the Christmas holidays back then when we were talking about this. So that was my guess back then. And I still think that's the case now. They can want to, and they do. Thousands of people, just like she says, really, 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 really want to. But they're not stepping up and actually physically training to actually then go out and do it. And I still, and if they are, I just haven't seen it. So my guess is they haven't moved to that training. They might want to, and they just haven't got around to it. This could just be, this could be luck. Maybe they're waiting for a later date. We'll see. But it is important to know that they desperately want to do it. There are thousands of people just like that. I just haven't seen that kind of training to see that grand scale. And keep in mind, like we said, the Hamas October 7th, 2023 types of attacks, going door to door, going into homes, that's what they want. These multiple teams of terrorists going in and terrorizing neighborhoods home by home. That's what they want now. That's the gold standard. It's not the 9/11. Although they love to do that too. They've now switched focuses to this home-to-home thing because they think that's more terrifying to us. And so, again, that intent remains, but I just haven't seen the physical training here at home that would really indicate that's about to happen.
Would that be difficult to train for? I mean, you just go around dinner time and there's people, having dinner with their families or watching television at night, just kick in the front door, boom, you shoot a couple of people, you're out, go next door, shoot a couple of people, you're out, maybe do it with 3 homes and then leave the neighborhood, go to another one, something like that.
Right. I think physically, once there's terrorists who are trained to actually do that and they're actually doing it physically, depending on the neighborhood, I as you and I talked about before, I'm usually working in either in Arizona or Georgia. So in my neighborhoods, good luck. If you come into our neighborhoods like that, you might wish that we called the cops rather than what we're going to do to you if you come on our street. But depending on some of the neighborhoods that they go to, you're right. That could be they could pull that off very quickly. I think if we wanted to see something like we saw uh, on October the 7th, that would take some grand scale training that I don't know how they could do that nearby. And maybe their plan is to just keep training in Afghanistan and then somehow get them here quickly. I don't know how they would do that either. Or maybe they can find a way to train in a way that I haven't considered. But I still think that's the holdup. And if they could do that training, and it would be, day in and day out for a while, and not to get caught with social media and with satellites and with our own drones. The United States, we have our own drones, and if somebody calls in a suspicious activity out on the field one day, we could send drones out there to take some pictures, and they'd never know. So I think it would be really, really difficult to do that kind of training over here now, and that might be the holdup right now.
Remember the police officer that taught me how to shoot? He said, I had asked him, based on what I had heard from others that said, here in the Atlanta area, carry a pistol 24/7, 365 days a year, because it's not a matter of if something's going to happen, it's when it's going to happen. And I asked him about it, and he said, yeah, definitely. He said, Mike, probably 90 minutes outside of Atlanta, there is a compound where we know terrorists are training. If you pull up to it, there are guards there with AK-47s right up front. Of course, they've got freedom to do that. They're out in the country. So I guess they're probably monitoring them with drones, huh?
Yeah, and I'm not sure what he's talking about. I'd love to know more about what he means, what he says that. I think even that kind of training, we probably have a few tricks up our sleeves. If there was really people that we know which building they're in training, I think the CIA might be able to help us with a few ideas to learn more about that, rather than us being stuck on the outside. If we had that much information, I imagine we'd be able to address it more robustly.
Okay, so now we talked about the training. Now, what they're wanting to do is go door to door, or go in and terrorize from house to house. If there are a few thousand Al-Qaeda or ISIS terrorists in the U.S., and it wouldn't take much training to do something like that, it seems like there could be a coordinated attack, just the different parts of the nation, spread out throughout the entire nation, targeting different kind of neighborhoods, from poor to middle class to the wealthy. It seems that if you've got a few thousand of these terrorists, by terrorizing in a coordinated attack like that, you could, within a matter of hours, have as many dead as we had on 9/11.
Right. And again, that's the dream. After October the 7th, and especially in their case, they recorded it. They recorded it and put it on TikTok and celebrated it, and they wanted the world to see that they were doing it. That's the dream, to have that here, in our country. If it were to happen, if something like that, thousands of people who are well trained going throughout the country, that would be a really bad day. And not only that, you'd have a lot of people overreacting, grabbing their guns and going to other neighborhoods, and then they would be mistaken for terrorists, and they're just trying to be good guys with a gun. That would be a really tough day. It would be tough for us to get a lockdown on that. And depending on who which administration is in charge, that could be either better or worse on how we deal with that. That kind of stuff really bothers me. Again, I think it will require a level of training that I haven't seen yet. And that does bother me.
But you just said a moment ago, it probably wouldn't take a whole lot of training to be able to go to a couple of houses like that and terrorize it. It's just a matter of everybody, the leader of Al-Qaeda saying, go.
Right. Well, I think this counts too, because I agree that if, let's just say you and I were bad guys and each of us brought a friend, so now there's four of us. It wouldn't take much training for the four of us to go and do our couple of neighborhoods. But to have thousands on the same day, all go on the same day, and nobody found out about it, that's really, really difficult. Because if we have thousands of people who are four guys like us, chances are people are going to talk. Somebody's going to say, like, hey, I wouldn't go outside tomorrow, or something like that, and that's going to tip off the right people. So I think for four guys just causing a bunch of grief, you're right. We could train up for that in a couple of days. But for thousands of people in 4-man teams, and for that not to be found out, that would take a lot of work.
Would you need a 4-man team or just two?
Two, same thing. Two guys by themselves in a community where nobody else has a gun could do a lot of damage.
Yeah. Wow. What do you recommend? What do you recommend to the
Well,
average citizen?
Well, you and I talked before, because you and I are both perfectly fine with people owning guns. I only add one thing. There's so many right-wing podcasters saying go get guns, but then they don't talk about gun responsibility or cleaning the gun. So that's my first thing, is if you're going to be a gun guy, get the gun, get the ammo, keep it clean, train with it, know where it is, keep it safe. If you do bring a gun into your house, statistically speaking, that's what's going to be what kills somebody in your family, statistically speaking. So keep that in mind. You'd have to be very safe. I just see a lot of my, especially young right-wing friends buying a bunch of guns, but not the ammo, not keeping them clean, and not keeping track. It's like they want to have the guns, but they don't want to take care of them. And so I was
Or
pushing in one of our
practice?
podcasts, right? So I was pushing, if you're going to do that, do it, be responsible. I grew up in the 80s where they preached gun responsibility in Georgia. Now they're just preaching have guns. You have the right, go get guns. That can cause a lot of grief. So I would say if you're going to be a gun guy, be responsible about it. And then to the American audience, I say, no matter how bad any kind of an attack is, we got to do what the Who's did in The Grinch Who Stole Christmas. When he went into that village and he took all their gifts and all their food, he went up to the top of the hill to watch them panic, and they didn't panic. They got up the next morning and danced around the tree and sang, and they were perfectly happy. They didn't have the food or the presents, and they were just like, we're still going to do our thing. That's what we got to do. If there's some horrific style attack, instead of getting on Twitter and blaming the other team and saying what you would have done if you would have, whatever, go out. If there's an attack on a Friday, go out and throw a party on Saturday, and then throw another one on Sunday. All the survivors. It's going to seem kind of heartless, but we got to show them that we're not going to cower in our homes and whine. That's my second, and that's not coming from the U.S. government. That's coming from me. Get back out there and show them that we're not the kind of people to cower, because what they want is the same thing that the Grinch wanted. They want panic, and which is what we do. Man, the wrong person holds up a 7-Eleven and we panic and freak out. So imagine what we do if something like that happens, because that's our mindset right now. So I would say change that. Be the kind of person that can take a hit, go back out and celebrate. I know it sounds heartless, but we're showing the enemy you can't bring us down. You can't make us panic.
Do you think there might be some stuff planned against our country on July 4th?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, July 4th is always an important target for bad guys. What they're
Especially
against
this
us
coming one, right?
Right. They're against us celebrating. They're against us feeling safe, and they want us freaking out. They want us to stay home. I'm going to go back to ISIS in 2014. They dreamed of going into a village where everyone's scared. And if everyone's scared, then they can drive in with their little Toyota trucks and take over neighborhood after neighborhood, and then just patrol the neighborhoods. And everyone doesn't go out except when they're told to. And then the Toyota little truck is watching them. And then they can, if they see something wrong, they just pull over, hold a little mock trial, execute them, and keep driving. They want to do that all over the world. That's what they want. So we just got to not be like that. We're not going to be so compliant.
Richard, thank you for this update. Really appreciate you, my friend. Wish I could call you my brother. Folks, you may already know this, but Richard is not of the same worldview as I have. He is not a Christian. He is an atheist. You can check him out on social media. The famous ape theist. Is that what your handle is?
The fallen atheist. I agree with C.S. Lewis that we're all fallen. Yeah.
But he's a good guy. Love you, my man. And we'll as things unfold in the future, if something comes up, we'll bring you on again.
That sounds great. I look forward to it.